I have also inserted a new section on Westernization, the holistic UPSC sociology notes. 1. Introduction to Westernization. Westernization refers to the changes brought about in Indian society and culture as a result of over 150 years of British rule. It is a blanket term for the adoption of Western, primarily British, language, dress, technology, institutions, and values. Core definition, M.N. Srinivas, the changes brought about in Indian society and culture as a result of over 150 years of British rule, the term subsuming changes occurring at different levels, technology, institutions, ideology, and values. The shift from traditional, Oriental knowledge, right arrow to modern, scientific knowledge. From customary law, khap, panchayat, right arrow to rule of law, courts, constitution. Key idea. It acts as a major vehicle for modernization in non-Western societies. Mains value add, keywords, ethical versus technological Westernization. It's not just about railways, tech, it's about humanitarianism, ethics. Primary versus secondary Westernization. Primary. The first generation of Indians who directly interacted with the British, interpreters, clerks. Secondary. The larger society that adopted these changes later via the primary group. 2. Key thinkers on Westernization. Thinker. Key concept, book. What they said about Westernization, M.N. Srinivas. Social change in modern India. Coined the term. He argued that Westernization created a new elite in India that cut across caste lines based on education, income. Yogendra Singh, modernization of Indian tradition, argued that Westernization led to cultural modernization, but structural modernization, caste breaking, was slow. He called this heterogenetic change, change coming from outside the system. D.P. Mukherjee, diversities, a Marxist critic. He argued Westernization created a rootless class, middle class, that was disconnected from Indian traditions but not fully accepted by the West. Andre Bette, caste, class, and power, observed that Westernization introduced class as a new form of stratification alongside caste. B.R. Ambedkar, annihilation of caste, saw Westernization, especially English education and law, as a liberating force for Dalits against the tyranny of Brahmanism. 3. Characteristics of Westernization. Humanitarianism, the belief in the welfare of all humans, e.g., abolition of sati, banning slavery. Rationalism, replacing superstition with scientific reasoning, introduction of Western medicine. Individualism, prioritizing the individual's rights over the community, family, e.g., right to property. Secularization, the state becoming neutral to religion. Law is not based on Sharia or Shastras but on parliament. Equality, the introduction of equality before law, rule of law, which was a radical shock to the hierarchical caste system. New institutions, introduction of the press, media, judiciary, parliamentary democracy, and universities. 4. Role in changing Indian society, detailed impact and examples. This section answers how it is responsible for change, with specific examples, structural changes, institutions, breakdown of Jajmani system, Western economy introduced cash payments. The traditional barter system, Jajmani, where a barber served a landlord for grain, collapsed. Example, a potter could now sell pots in the market for cash instead of being tied to the village landlord. The steel frame of bureaucracy. The British introduced the ICS, Indian Civil Service. Example, administration shifted from the whims of the king to written files and rules, Weber's rational legal authority. Transport and mobility. Railways and buses forced people of different castes to sit together. Example, M.N. Srinivas noted that the anonymity of the train compartment allowed lower castes to travel without bowing down to upper castes. B. Cultural and lifestyle changes. Food habits, introduction of tea, biscuits, bread, and eggs. Example, the concept of dining tables changed family dynamics. Instead of sitting on the floor, hierarchy, people sat on chairs, equality. Dress code, adoption of shirts, trousers, and leather shoes. Example, the blouse and petticoat worn with the sari is actually a Victorian, British influence. Before that, saris were draped differently. Time discipline, shift from social time, sunrise, sunset, to clock time. Example, factory whistles in office hours, 9 to 5, forced Indians to value punctuality, a purely Western industrial concept. C. Social reform and values. Rise of rational religion. Reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Brahmo Samaj, used Western rationalism to critique Indian evils like sati and idol worship. Example, they argued that sati was not religious but inhumane, Western humanitarian value. English language, it became the bridge between South and North India. Example, the freedom movement was ironically united by the colonizers' language, English, which allowed a Bengali leader to talk to a Tamil leader. D. Change in family and gender. Matrimonial changes, Western laws, divorce codes, transformed marriage from a sacrament to a contract. Women in public, Western education for girls, started by missionaries, brought women out of the purdah. Example, the first Indian women doctors, like Anandi Gopal Joshi, were products of Western medical education. 5. Critique of Westernization, critical analysis. Why is it not always good? Blind imitation, the Brown Sahib, Indians often copied the superficial aspects, dress, drinking scotch, without adopting the core values, dignity of labor, scientific temper. Cultural schism, it created a deep divide between the English-speaking elite, India, and the vernacular masses, Bharat. Alienation, as D.P. Mukherjee argued, the westernized elite became strangers in their own land, looking down upon their own traditions. Incomplete change, we adopted Western institutions, courts, police, but ran them with a feudal mindset, corruption, VIP culture. Ethnocide, critics argue it led to the death of indigenous knowledge systems, Ayurveda, Gurukuls, which were labeled as backward. 6. Sanskritization versus Westernization, M.N. Srinivas, feature. Sanskritization, Westernization, direction. Looking back, scriptures, tradition. Looking forward, science, modernity. Agent, internal, caste imitation. External, British rule, colonialism. Participants, usually lower, middle castes. Usually upper castes initially. Result, rise in ritual status. Rise in secular status, job, class. Link, Srinivas observed, the upper castes westernize, while the lower castes Sanskritize. This creates a cycle of chasing status. New exam-relevant additions, score boosters, 7. The little tradition versus great tradition, Robert Redfield and Milton Singer use this to explain how westernization enters culture. Concept, little tradition, local, village-based culture. Great tradition, national, elite, Sanskritic culture. Impact, westernization entered the great tradition, first, cities, elites, and then trickled down to the little tradition, villages, via movies, radio, and migration. 8. Modernization without westernization, is it possible? A common debate topic, yes, Japan is the best example. They modernized industry, tech, while keeping their culture, language, dress strictly Japanese. India's case, India is often accused of the opposite, westernization without modernization. We wear jeans and speak English, Western, but often vote on caste lines and demand dowry, not modern. 9. Yogendra Singh's integrated approach. Argument, we should not see Sanskritization and Westernization as enemies. Synthesis, they often work together. Example, a Dalit officer uses Westernization, education, IAS job, to get power, and then uses that power to build a temple or organize a religious festival, Sanskritization, to get social respect. 10. Pseudo-Westernization. Concept, when people adopt Western gadgets but reject Western values. Example, using an ultrasound machine, Western tech, to determine the sex of a fetus and abort it if it's a girl, anti-Western, anti-humanist value. This is a dangerous mix of technology plus feudalism. 11. Conclusion. Westernization was the shock therapy that forced Indian society to look at itself critically. Summary. It gave India the tools, press, law, democracy, to fight its own internal evils. Final verdict. As Jawaharlal Nehru said, India is a palimpsest, a manuscript written over many times. Westernization is just the latest layer. It has not erased the old layers but blended with them to create a unique Indian modernity.